Hello, everybody, and welcome to a video where I will be discussing the draft pack anatomy. So which cards go into a pack and how you can use that information to help you in your drafting. Should be a pretty quick one, but it does have some interesting tidbits for you. Before I dive in, I want to remind you that if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe for more draft content, and comment below with your questions, thoughts, and feedback, and any topics you'd like to see me cover in the future. So let's dive right in. The first thing in every single pack is going to be a rare or a mythic rare. Oftentimes these cards are going to be more powerful or more unique than the commons and uncommons in the pack, and it's pretty clear when you get past a pack if the rare or mythic is missing, because there's only one of them, and if it's not there, it's pretty obvious. You're like, well, the rare is missing. So pretty straightforward there. There are also 3 uncommons in every single pack. This is one of those like initial things where you maybe should register if an uncommon's missing early on in the pack, like, okay, an uncommon's missing, things of that nature. Oftentimes there can be a comparison between the uncommons and the rares, where there's like one really good uncommon, and so like that one has like a cutoff above some of the rares. So if you get past a pack that is missing an uncommon but has a pretty good rare, maybe you can start to get a sense for which uncommon was taken, because you're like, well, this is the rare that was in the pack, this is the only uncommon in the set that is better than it, everyone knows that it's better than it, and then you can start to kind of read signals that way just by knowing what goes into a pack. So that's one of the first ways you can kind of use draft pack anatomy in your own drafts. There are also 10 commons in every pack, and there is going to be at least one common of every color. So that's also worth noting, where if you get past a pack and there's no red card in it, you're going to be like thinking, well, there's no red card in this pack, someone took the red common out of the pack. You can then maybe cross-reference, okay, there's a pretty good green common in the pack, what was the red card that was taken out of this pack? That's a way you can cross-reference. You can also cross-reference by like, okay, the rare is still in the pack, all of the uncommons are still in the pack, a common is missing, someone took a common over this great uncommon, these are the like short list of commons that are better than this uncommon. It's important to remember that each of these is just like a little bit of a signal point. It's not really a like, oh, this has to be the card they took, because sometimes people evaluate cards differently. Sometimes people just have like different thought processes. Maybe they'd already played the really good card a bunch of times, so they wanted to try something unique. It's not always set in stone, but these are some of the ways that you can get like kind of an idea of what the people around you are doing just by knowing what goes into a draft pack. And then the final card is the basic land. This is also a useful thing to know, because sometimes a player will take a basic land instead of a card and just pass it along. So if there's like a mediocre white card and they're not playing a white deck, then they might just pass that white card along and take the basic land out of the pack. So they kind of give you a little bit of a nudge towards that color. They're like, see, I'm not taking the white cards. I'd rather take a basic land than take this card. So that is a strategy you can use yourself as well. It's like a kind of silent signaling in a way, where you're kind of giving them a little bit of a, hey guy, maybe you should do this. It could really help you out. I'm not drafting this color, because you would rather take any card that's potentially playable than a basic land. So that's just one of the ways that goes. There is a slight exception when sometimes in a set there will be like full art basic lands that are like really cool and you want to put those in your deck. So sometimes players will take those instead of another card if they know they're not going to play it. So don't read too much into that in some cases, but a lot of the time, if they pass you a playable card and a color instead of a basic land, that means that they're not going to be playing that color. There's also foils if you are drafting in paper. Foils generally, I think, replace the common slot, and then they can be like of any rarity. So they kind of throw a wrench into the works, and it's worth knowing that foils will exist. Sometimes if you are drafting in papers, you might get past a really good rare because the person took a foil rare that was better. So that does also introduce some amount of variance into the draft. And so another reason why you just can't take everything as you see it, because sometimes they would want to take like a foil uncommon that's really good over a really strong like another uncommon or something of that nature. It is also worth noting that if you are in a situation where you have the option between taking a foil version of a card and a non-foil version, like say 2 commons, because that does happen, you'll sometimes have 2 of the same card in a pack. Strategically speaking, it is generally better to take the non-foil version, because if you end up with multiples of that card, it gives your opponent less information in a best of 3 if you are playing in paper. So if you're in a big stakes event and you have the choice between like a foil burns, like let's just say it's a red burn spell, you have a choice between a foil version and a non-foil version. If you take the foil version and you somehow end up with 2 copies in your deck, in game 1 when you use that burn spell, say you use the non-foil version, and then in game 2 you draw your foil version, you cast the foil version, all of a sudden your opponent knows you have 2 copies of that spell in your deck, so they can play around it better. Whereas if you have non-foil versions, you play the non-foil version in game 2, you draw your second copy and play the non-foil version in game 2. And let's just say that those were like you drew a copy in each game. Your opponent does not know that you have 2 copies because you only played one each game, so they might not play around it as heavily because they won't know that you have 2 of them. Whereas if you played a foil in one game and a non-foil in the other game, they're going to know, okay, they have a foil version and a non-foil version. And then finally, there are some set specific things to keep in mind when drafting. For example, in sets that have double-faced cards, those cards are going to be having an impact on the drafting portion because they're drafted essentially face up, because when you open a pack, the double-faced card is visible for everyone to see. So usually everyone like has to hold up the card, and if someone like opens up like a double-faced rare that is like a really strong black card or really strong green card or something like that, and they take it, the person to their left is like, well, I don't want to take a black card or a green card or whatever they took. Let's just say green card because a lot of good werewolves are greener, let's just say. So they open up a great green werewolf, they take that card, and all of a sudden the person to their left is like, well, I don't want to take green cards because I'm going to get cut the entire draft. And so it really does have an impact on how that ends up going. So those are kind of some set specific things you can keep in mind. There's also things where some sets will be seeded with certain things. So in Dominaria, there was always going to be a legendary card in every pack, which was going to help support the historic theme and the fact that legendary creatures like actually mattered in that set. So it's also worth knowing, like, okay, in this set, there's always going to be at least one of blank, or there's always going to be an artifact, or always going to be an enchantment, or always going to be some sort of card, because then you can kind of formulate your strategy around that. So that is worth knowing for sure. But yeah, those set specifics can have an impact, especially those double-faced cards, because it's like giving extra information to the table, and it really makes it a unique experience. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video on Draft Pack Anatomy. If you did enjoy it, remember to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and comment below questions, thoughts, feedback. And if you made it all the way till the end of the video, leave hashtag Packmaster to let me know you made it all the way till the end of the video. If you'd like to support my content or find a host of cool other things like the Discord server, the Patreon, the Twitch stream, and my articles, you can find those in the description down below. But that's going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next time.